Hi, my name is Debbie Watts and I'm here today to give you a tutorial for stenciling as promised. I think today I'd like to make this inspirational for you. Get out those stencils that are in your craft stash and you bought used once and then thought, what else can I do with it? So I'll show you different types of stencils today. So we've got some steels, we've got some acetate masks. But before we start, I think I need to introduce you to somebody or something. You'll probably hear him in the background, and he is my yellow-crowned Amazon. So let's quickly say hi. His name's Buddy. So literally, he is my crafting buddy. He's always with me when I craft. So here he is, in all his wonderful glory. He's a yellow-crowned Amazon, as I said, and he sits quite happily on his Java. When the glitters, gilding flakes come out, he kind of has a sixth sense on this and he tends to take flight, so it gets quite messy and the glitter literally goes everywhere. He is such a cheeky character, but butter wouldn't melt, so let's hope he behaves himself today. On the left we have just oxides and on the right we have embossing powders. Let's take a quick look at how I store my stencils. It's on the market, you can get some really lovely bold, beautiful colours of ring binders to store them in. So I store them in plastic wallets with a piece of paper in the middle, and just really so then you can see them as you flick through. You've got double the storage space. So an A4 ring binder. I used to keep them in a box, but I was forever emptying the box and forgetting what I had and therefore forgetting about my stencils. So I find this system really works well. Let's start the first card. This is the steel stencil with oxides. I first want to give you a tip about using your stencils, your steel ones. The intricate cutouts can be quite sharp, so you just really need to be careful of your fingers, especially when cleaning. So a top tip would be to just drop the stencil into warm water and use a nail brush. I use a magnetic sheet also to keep things firmly into place. So to put the card on, I fix it with a small piece of craft tape and then place my card onto the magnetic sheet just to make things secure up and just push down on the glued area. So it's nice and secure. Taking your stencil, drop onto the magnetic sheet where you want the image to be. You're going to have some surplus space around the edges. The magnetic sheet with the cardstock as a layer in between just makes the steel stencil grip nice and firmly. An additional way to keep your stencil into place is tape all of the edges, and I've used a low tack masking tape here. Decorators low tack would do as long as it's low tack so it doesn't rip the card. So I created a frame on all four edges and then fixed it to the craft mat itself. This just keeps it nice and secure and prevents any movement whilst you're actually using your oxides or other medias to add the colour to your piece of craft. For today's card we're using 4 different oxide colours and some makeup sponges. So colour by colour, I want you to add each of the colour to various sections of the stencil. As you can see, I'm overlaying the colours too, so it doesn't have to be in unique sections. As you gradually build up, just make sure you're covering the edges of the stencils with your blending or makeup sponge. Final colour goes on and I think we're almost there. So what I want to do is take off 3 sides of the tape, leaving that top layer in place, and it's quite important. The reason why I don't take the top tape off is so that once I think I've finished, I can literally lift the stencil off to reveal the fantastic work and the colours, and I can then lay the stencil back down if there was an area that I wasn't quite happy for, and it perfectly aligns up. So second tip is to keep that top tape in place. Once you're happy with your stenciled image, remove the stencil completely, making sure that you don't tear your card. Then we want to just trim to size, take away those surplus edges. We're now ready for construction. So you'll need some folded card, a matten layer and some white double-sided tape. Actually, I think I might want to add a sentiment. I'm just going to stamp a sentiment on this card. So as you can see, it's a clear polymer stamp. And the good thing about this is you just really play and decide where you're going to position. So I think I want my sentiment about there. So not attaching it to your block just yet allows you the freedom to decide where you want it, as opposed to fixing it to your block and then bulkily moving the block around before you actually decide where you want your sentiment to be. So your choice, either straight to the block and stamp, or simply just lay the sentiment over your card until you decide exactly where you'd like it to be. Take your stamp, ink it up. I use the VersaFine ink pad and stamp away. Once you've stamped the sentiment, we want to start the card construction. So on the back of each layer, using double-sided tissue tape, just add to the 4 edges some tape and then layer up to your base card, leaving a nice even border to each of the edges. For the card, once it was in place, I wanted to add some gems for the flower centres. So that's the first card. Let's move on to the next. For this card, we are going to use a plastic stencil and we are going to use some embossing powders. So firstly, dust your cardstock. Then frame, as you did in the first card, your stencil to your cardstock, but this time you don't need the magnetic sheet. So with your VersaMark embossing pad, push down onto the stenciled area through the images so that your embossing ink is picked up by your cardstock. Just spend a minute or so doing this to make sure you've got some even coverage. So again, take the tape away from the sides, leaving the top in place to hold it, and lift up your stencil, and you probably just see the camera picking that up, but you can see where the VersaMark has actually gone through the stencil shape to the card. So that's now ready for adding embossing powder. I'm using a silver embossing powder here. As you can see where the tape has been, it's stuck. So heat set and then trim your card to size. I want to just add a bit of colour to this, so I'm going to be using 2 oxides. Firstly, spun sugar, cover the whole of the card, and where you have embossed it will resist. Then I want to add accents of walled lipstick to the bag and to the shoes. To the edges, I'm just going to add some black soot distress ink. We then construct as we did before, adding double-sided tissue tape to the back and layer, and a few gems just to decorate the card and add a sentiment. hope you found this tutorial inspirational and helpful. So thank you from me, Aracula Card Art, and I hope to see you again soon. If you'd like to watch more of my tutorials, please tune into my YouTube channel, Aracula Card Art, and please like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave your comments. Thank you, and from me, happy crafting.